How's it going, Jet?
Good, how are you?
What you got the gun for?
Why I got the gun? What you got the gun for?
Because I'm authorized.
Alright, well, I'm authorized to
Get down on the ground.
Get on the ground.
Get down on the ground.
You're gonna have to shoot me, man.
So I'm going to give you another quick anecdote to kind of lead off the talk tonight. This is Kathryn Johnston. She's a 90.
According to them.
Well, that was the story initially. So she was a 92-year-old woman, lived in a rough neighborhood in Atlanta. The week of Thanksgiving 2006, there was a narcotics unit from the Atlanta Police Department out in an SUV. They saw a guy walking along the side of the road that they had arrested on drug charges several times before. They jumped out on him, threw him on the ground, put a gun to his head. We would find out later, planted a bag of marijuana on him, and basically, gave him the routine. You have a long rap sheet, you know it, we know it, tell us where we can find a significant quantity of drugs, or we're going to arrest you again. So he just made up an address, basically, on the spot, and it happened to be Kathryn Johnston's address. Now, what's supposed to happen, of course, is the police are supposed to get a confidential informant to do a controlled drug buy from the house. So, they put a wire on him, give him some marked bills, and that's where they get their probable cause then to go get a search warrant and do their raid. The problem was that he had described basically what they later called a career-making drug bust, and they didn't want to risk having the drug supply being moved before they could get there. So they lied. They made up an informant. They fabricated a drug buy, and a process that was supposed to take a few days took a few hours. And so later that afternoon, they raided Kathryn Johnston's home. Kathryn Johnston woke up to the sound of people breaking into her house. It took them a few minutes to get the bars off her door. When they did, she was standing in the living room, pointing the old rusty revolver she kept next to her bed at the door. The police opened fire and killed her. They initially said that she shot at them first. We later found out that wasn't true. The gun she had wasn't functional. 2 officers were wounded by bullets fired by their fellow officers. They called for 2 ambulances for those officers. They did not call an ambulance for Kathryn Johnston. Instead, they handcuffed her and left her to bleed to death on her living room floor while one of them went to her basement to plant a supply of drugs that they claimed they were going to find. Now, at this point, they realize they have to cover their tracks, right? So they have to find an informant who's going to claim to be the informant in the search warrant affidavit. So they go to this guy they've used in the past, and drug informants are fairly shady characters. They tend to be addicts or people who are trying to get their own charges reduced or dismissed. And to this guy's credit, he refused to play along. There's an amazing 911 call, you can still find the audio for online, where he calls 911 from the back of an Atlanta squad car, and the 911 operator answers the phone or answers the call, and he says, "Give me the FBI." Just sort of charmingly naive. And he says, they're trying to make me say I helped kill that old lady, and I don't want any part of that. One of the officers apparently overhears this. He's in the car alone when he makes the call. He freaks out, jumps out of the car, starts running. They start chasing him, and now there's this surreal sort of foot chase going on in downtown Atlanta. Ends up going through a couple businesses. He ends up losing them long enough to get to a phone. He was also working with the ATF at the time as an informant. So he calls his ATF handler, who then sort of swoops in and picks him up, drives him out to the suburbs, puts him up in a hotel, and now we have a federal investigation. What the federal investigation found was that this was rampant in Atlanta, that the lying on the search warrants, the fabrication of drug buys, the cover-ups, this was going on, the wrong door raids, this was happening way, way too often in Atlanta. And the reason why it was happening is because Atlanta narcotics officers had quotas they had to meet. Each month they had to arrest so many people on drug charges, they had to confiscate a minimum supply of illicit drugs. And their performance reviews, their promotions, their raises were based on them meeting and exceeding these quotas. The Atlanta City Council held hearings where about a dozen more people came forward and said that they too had been wrongly raided by a narcotics team. The city made a lot of promises, a lot of local politicians got really angry. In the end, not much happened at all. They created a new civilian review board, but within about 3 years, the police union had sued to basically render it impotent. They took away its subpoena power. They took away its ability to. Initially, they wanted the civilian review board's recommendations to be permanent, binding. Yeah, and after the police union was done, it was they were merely recommendations, optional. So basically, within a few years, things were back to normal in Atlanta, even after all of this.